Okay, guys, get ready for a really intimate conversation this week. Today, we have the privilege of hearing a really tender side of Holli Margell's experience as a photographer, and specifically as a daughter of someone who has recently died from breast cancer. A side note, Holli and I don't talk about this really in the episode, but I know it's super timely to mention that providing places for women to get cancer screenings and regular checkups with the doctor, it's so important. I am an avid supporter of Planned Parenthood for this very reason. And unfortunately, the accessibility of this service that they offer their community is being threatened with our current political climate. This is why, for anyone who leaves a review in iTunes saying how much they appreciate Holli's vulnerability, I will donate $10 from my personal bank account to Planned Parenthood. So leave a review in iTunes mentioning Holli's episode, and I will donate $10 to ensure cancer screenings are accessible and affordable for women. Okay, back to Holli. You guys are going to adore her. She has such a kind and generous spirit, which I know comes through in her parenting as a mompreneur and an owner of Native Light Photography, which is based out of the Seattle area. And guess what? Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Remember Nathan Vass, the artist and bus driver we interviewed a couple weeks ago back in episode 42? Well, he nominated Holli to appear on Bare Naked Bravery. And if you remember, he was nominated by a fellow Bare Naked Bravery listener. So this is 4th degree bravery right here. So freaking cool. Makes my heart explode. So let's jump into it. Take a deep breath, because this one is worth listening up for. And without further ado, I give you Holli Margell. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today, because that's how these facets of Bare Naked Bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world, so let's be brave together. Are you ready for some Bare Naked Bravery?
I am, yes.
Holli Margell, we were just talking about how your name came about. It's your husband's name, last name.
Yep.
We interviewed Nina Ferreira, who is an American business owner who is moving to Spain, which is a neighboring country to Greece, which is your husband's place of origin.
Yes.
And I always think it's so funny how names, especially when our ancestors immigrated to the U.S., our names changed.
Yes.
But you're not Greek.
No. And he's part Greek. The other part we're not sure about, but he's got the Greek grandma, which is really fun. No, I'm an American melting pot.
Yes.
I've got, if I do my 23andMe stats, it's funny because every year since I've been an adult, I've had someone ask me what type of Asian I am. And I'm like, I'm not Asian. So I did 23andMe and I found out that I'm like 0.03% Asian.
Wow.
Which is hilarious. So I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what that means. So I'm Native American, Norwegian, Croatian. Those are like the 3 dominant genes. And then I'm not sure, I'm a melting pot of everything else from East Asian, West African, Western European, and
I
all
love
of
that.
So yeah, so I really tie into my Native American and Norwegian roots.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
I know that I'm majority, this is irrelevant to the conversation maybe for today, but I know that I was talking with my sister the other day, and I know that we have a lot of Scotch Irish and a lot of Swedish.
Oh, fun. They're all like right near each other.
Yep, we're right around in there. So I don't know. I just was really fascinated by that name story that you mentioned. So you're a photographer, and you are a mom, and you are a wife, and you're an artist, and you're also a friend of Nathan Vass, who's also on our show. He, when I end all of the episodes or recording all these episode conversations, I get to ask everyone who was just interviewed who they think should be on the show. And Nathan thought you should be on the show. And so I'm so glad that that ripple effect and ended up happening today. So it's really exciting. How do you know Nathan Vass?
So I met him through a neighbor friend. I had an idea for a personal project, and I was trying to figure out how to orient around it and if I needed to bring in other photographers because it was this really big idea. And the neighbor said, you should meet Nathan. And he knew him through work. So my neighbor, Mike, is a bus driver, metro driver. And so he basically sent an email introduction, and we had kind of like a blind date friendship meetup. And he was delightful and so enthusiastic about life and people. And so the project is called Seattle Shines. And the idea was to show or highlight people in our community who are making a difference, no matter really how small. And Nathan, as a photographer, is a real artful, kind of a environmental, sort of experiential photographer where he captures things. And when you look at the images, you kind of feel like you're there, but you're not just there, you're really in it. And I'm more of the traditional, photojournalism portrait photographer. And so we decided to collaborate, and we collaborated for, I think, about 2 years. And he would photograph, the environment of a neighborhood, and I would try to round up people that I could interview and photograph. And by interview, I mean, talk a little bit about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and kind of take an environmental portrait of them doing those things. And as life happens, both of us are incredibly busy with, a million other things. So that project's somewhat dormant, but it's still alive online at seattleshines.com.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That link will be in the show notes too. I think that it's so cool that you're basically doing a neighborhood portrait.
Yeah.
Like a multi-dimensional neighborhood portrait.
Yes.
So cool.
Thank you.
So cool. So I'm just curious, why do you think Nathan suggested you for the show? It's kind of an audacious question.
I have no idea. I don't know. I think we probably fascinate each other because we're both driven by very similar kind of vision in sort of looking on the bright side of things and sort of wanting to celebrate life in our own very different ways. He's a young adult who's living life pursuing any art project he wants with his free time and working. And I'm the opposite. I have a family. I have 2 children in elementary school and a small business that I'm running. And so I'm just like, I have all these beautiful, fun, interesting art project ideas. I just don't have the time to pursue them. And so maybe the juggling act of what I do fascinates him, or I don't know. I think I was really humbled when I got the email that he nominated me, because I thought, well, I'm not doing anything big. Like I do a lot of little things, I guess.
Well, I think I have a feeling, and Nathan would agree with me on this, that it's probably because he sees I know that as a singer-songwriter, when I admire my other fellow singer-songwriters or musicians, it's because I really admire their work and I see something awesome in what they're doing, not necessarily in how big they are or famous they are. And my favorite singer-songwriters are the ones that aren't famous at all.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So my inkling is that it's probably part of that. What is it like to partner with somebody who has a completely different specialty in the same skill set that you have?
Yeah. So I find it really refreshing when I've worked, like I think the magic in collaborative projects is seeing what comes out of it. So I find that I don't have extensive experience in this, but when I work together with other people towards a shared vision, the vision sort of evolves and it becomes better than I had originally imagined. And so working with Nathan on Seattle Shines, it was really fascinating to go, okay, here's my vision. Do you want to participate? And how do you want to participate? And I felt like it ended up being a more well-rounded, more interesting dynamic because we were so different and looked at things the way that we do.
Mm-hmm. It's a real magic that comes from collaboration, but it takes some serious balls to be able to humble yourself and admit that like you need somebody else to help make this project better.
Yes.
That two heads are better than one. It's not an easy admonition. So yeah. I applaud you guys. It's so cool. Yeah. Especially in photography. At least I don't know. Do photographers collaborate a lot?
Yeah. So there's of course people who don't, but I want to say that photographers in general are pretty friendly creatives that we really do. I feel that we do better when we work together and sort of show, collaborate however we can. I've done a lot better in my business by having an accountability partner that I meet with who's a childhood photographer. So she does a very different genre than I do, but we're able to sort of inspire each other to keep our nose to the grindstone or sort of like keep propelling us forward. Because I think in the creative world, whether you're a painter or a songwriter or a photographer, it's really easy to go through like the creative cycle of inspiration peaking and then the low valleys where you're like, I've got nothing, everything's ruined and nothing's good. And then peaking again, you know what I mean? So we have this weird roller coaster we're riding. And if you have other people you can collaborate with, or even just like, for me, the co-working and accountability piece with my friend Lena, it definitely keeps me going and keeps me from those low valleys.
It's almost like if you surround yourself with enough people going through the same kind of cycle, that inevitably one of you will be at a peak and you can look to that person and go, if you're down in the dumps, you can go, okay, I won't always be here.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And you're exactly right. I've seen that several times working with Lena. And it's interesting because our focus or our clients are on different schedules in their lives. So, her peak season is not my peak season. And so we're able to sort of like be those cheerleaders where we're at.
How did you find that kind of relationship? I mean, did you just like shoot her an email out of the blue?
So it's the power of the mom or the parent network that I'm in.
Yeah.
Okay, let me think back here. It's been a couple of years. I knew we sort of, both of our daughters are in the same grade. They're actually in the same Girl Scout troop. So we kept seeing each other and passing each other in the halls at school until our daughters became in the same classroom together. And then they're very much the same kind of strong-willed, free spirit little girls that love each other or butt heads with each other. Mm-hmm. And so through our daughters, we got acquainted and learned more about each other. And then we're like, hey, we should go on like a photography play date together and kind of see what this is about. And I think it was Lena who came up with the idea of having like a weekly meetup, not just with me, but with several other mompreneurs who needed that in-person accountability. And so we met once a week. I want to say we started a couple years ago, and over time it's evolved and people have sort of faded out or they drop in, but Lena and I are the two that show up every week. So it kind of happened very organically.
Yeah. I think if you want something like that in your career and you don't have that kind of accountability or that kind of community, mm-hmm. it's okay to also expand beyond your specific industry. I mean, I have two groups that I meet with on a weekly basis right now.
Cool.
And one is just podcasters. So mm-hmm. we're talking about online business, podcasting, kind of nerdy stuff. So like technical analytics kind of things.
Right.
And then I'm in another group that's with a bunch of other creatives, photographers of various kinds. There's 3 different photographers. There's a guy that does special effects and another chick who does marketing, just like traditional business coaching marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us are in this, we're all dealing with the same things, but it's such a valuable resource to have 6 people from different industries with completely different set of experiences to be able to bounce your ideas off of.
Yes.
So even, and I know that they are, even the photographers that are in the group, they're all photographers, but they're all, we were talking about this the other day, we're all niche mates. Like instead of competition,
Yes.
we're all niche mates. We're
Yes.
all in the same thing together, but we all have our unique experiences that make our audience really tiny and really specific.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny, not in like the weak way, but tiny in the like really laser focused kind of way. So
Right.
yeah. And the way that those came about for me was organic. I know that there's some paid groups that are out there that you can like pay to be part of a group for a couple weeks, a couple months or so.
Mm-hmm.
Those are valuable too, but the organic ones seem to be really, really cool.
I agree. That's really cool that you found 2 groups too.
Oh yeah. But what's fascinating is I started meeting with those folks because when I sent out an email to some of this fellow singer-songwriters that I'm jazzed about and that I know that we're all cheerleaders for each other, I was like, hey, let's do this thing. Nobody wanted in on it because,
really?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it had to do with, we're all touring and traveling and our schedules are totally different. And so like getting together on a regular basis was going to be pretty tricky based on who was not in town or not near the computer or whatever. We're not driving across Nebraska.
Right.
But I had to reach out to other industries because my own industry wasn't allowing or wasn't nurturing of that kind of collaboration.
Right.
Okay, so let's change gears a wee bit. When you are being brave as a photographer, how are you using your personal life in that?
It's a really interesting question. I think it's very instinctual. I don't think about it a whole lot. I am very present when I'm working with someone to photograph them. And I think that comes from a lot of experiences from life in general.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just go back a little bit. I started out as a wedding photographer's assistant back when medium format cameras were the standard. So my job was to load film and to carry gear and to corral people at weddings. And I very quickly learned that I was very good at connecting with people or being empathetic with where they were at and kind of gently shepherding them where they needed to be. In the wedding scene, there are weddings that go very smoothly and everyone gets along. And then there's the weddings where both the bride and groom have divorced parents who have to get along. So I found that my strength is in empathy and sort of taking the emotional temperature of others in person. And so that translates to the current stuff I do, which is trying to make sure someone feels at ease and comfortable in front of the camera. I know that I even feel very awkward and self-conscious when a camera is pointed at me. And so I just sort of make an effort to be as present as I can and sort of figure out what it is that's going to help someone feel more comfortable and like themselves. And then focus on finding that moment that really captures it. So, for example, I don't always know people or meet them before a session. I try to make a point of having a conversation on the phone with them or meeting them first so I can kind of get a feel for who they are and what's going to be the best recommendations for a location or what they wear and that type of thing. And then I just make a really instinctual sort of mode that I turn into where I'm present. And once I identify what a genuine smile looks like, whether it's in their eyes or their actual smile, I usually know that's what I'm aiming for. And I either say something ridiculous and goofy to get them to laugh, or I engage them in conversation and then I start photographing them.
Yeah. I do a similar thing when I'm teaching anybody really, like, or even performing, like reading the room and reading the people that are around you, and using that to inform your forward motion. Oh my gosh, if you don't have that skill as a musician anyways, then you come across as a total asshole.
That's hilarious.
Or you can come across as a total asshole.
Right.
It can, you finish a really sad song, and if you're not aware that the rest of the audience is like, oh my gosh, slit my wrists right now.
Right.
Like, take me out of this hole that you've put me in.
Yeah.
If you're not sensitive to that, then your audience ends up having a really interesting experience. Unless that's your intention. And then by all means, go for it.
Right. That's so funny.
And I think, as in some of my side jobs that I've had in my earlier days was I was doing event coordination for a wedding venue wedding in an arts venue in Seattle. And oh my gosh, that was the summer of weddings for me. I was in charge of 29 weddings in one summer.
Wow, that's a lot.
It was awful. I'm definitely going to elope someday.
Good for you. I'm glad you figured that out now.
But not before we get awesome portraits done. So
that's right.
Okay, so let's veer even more into the personal right now. You have experience with cancer.
Yes.
You personally, or just in proximity?
In proximity.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So how much do you want to know?
Well,
I could talk for hours about it.
Let's do this. Talk to me about cancer and bravery.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to dive into the experience of it. My mom is a middle child of 5, and her younger sister died of a rare form of oral cancer when she was 53 years old. And that was like 3 years ago. And her sister was very much like a second mother to me growing up. My mom was the single mom juggling several part-time jobs, and her sister provided childcare and was the stay-at-home mom who lived in a mansion on a lake and had the time and luxury of being that stay-at-home parent. And so I want to say from the age of probably 2 until I was about 11 or 12, she was that very stable motherly figure in my life. And her 2 children are a year older and a year younger than me. So I kind of felt very connected to her. And then, of course, as an adult and living in a different state than her later on, I grew apart. But her cancer really shook me to the core.
Yeah.
Because she was so young, and it made me sort of reevaluate my life as a mom and a person. And I think I was 31 when she died.
When you're reevaluating life, what did that look like?
It was, it's not going to sound really cheesy. So it was one of those moments where you're like, what am I doing with my life? Like, seriously, where am I going? Why am I doing this? Am I living my life the way that I really want to?
Right. Were you doing something different than you are now?
Yeah. So I would say I was in kind of just parent survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were 3 years younger, so they were 6 and 9. And I was the mom who volunteered for everything under the sun at their school, as well as in the community, and wanted to have this business, but it really just got like my very, very limited free time, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And I realized that what I really wanted to do was have a sustainable business that could actually support our family part, or at least partially, and enable me to really pursue my passion for photography in a way that would enable me to travel the world and do some humanitarian work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where my current business, Native Light Photography, had its birth, I guess you could say. I sat down and I did there's a lot of mind mapping suggestions and whatnot, and figured out, okay, well, what am I good at? What can I niche at and still have the flexibility to chaperone a field trip with my kids So I did that, and that's been going. And then
let's pause.
Okay.
Because the ability to figure out what you want, not what your environment is going to allow you to do, that is a complete flip. I think that a lot of people don't do frequently, especially business owners. Even those business owners who say, I want to be a photographer someday, they end up like putting themselves in a hole that they don't belong in because they're not willing to ask that question first of, okay, what do I really want?
Right. Yeah.
And it sounds like what you really want doesn't necessarily have anything to do with photography.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily true.
Okay.
It's more about designing the life that I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And photography is, let's see how to describe it. Photography is the way that I celebrate life.
Yeah.
It's the way that I can best as an artist capture the beauty that I see. And the flip for me was from being art and nature photographer and families to business photography, because I figured out that if I could use that passion I have for capturing beauty and telling a story and focus it on as a service, then I think that's going to be more profitable to enable me to live the life that I want to live.
Yeah.
So it is photography, but it's more about really, really reaching in and figuring out why and what.
Right. And that's what I was aiming for, was that, photography is the medium in which you celebrate life. And one of the ways you celebrate life is by going to field trips with your kiddos.
Right. Yes, that's true.
So I would encourage anyone who is kind of feeling stuck or trapped in an industry or a situation where they think they put themselves in and it doesn't fit. Mm-hmm. Going back to the core reason,
right?
Or for not even going back, but just finding the core reason is really powerful.
Yes. Yeah. If you know the why, then the rest is pretty clear. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first Bare Naked Bravery challenge was in May of this year, and it was a total success. And I cannot stress how inspiring it is to dive into a pool of you brave people with a bunch of other folks doing exactly the same thing. And I want to make sure that you're signed up for the next 5-day Bare Naked Bravery challenge. That is, if you're up for it. So what happens is individually, each challenger picks a specific area of life, business, creativity, relationships, whatever, an area that you know you need to be brave in. Then going one step further, picking a specific tangible task for that week. So this could be finally getting around to doing your taxes. It could be knowing that you have some difficult conversations coming up. It could be even as simple as doing a different kind of exercise that week, just to mix things up and experience something different. It could be getting back online and going on a date. Whatever you choose, big or small, as a group with all the other challengers, we go through some of the basics of bravery together. And each of these 5 days will have a really simple assignment aimed at exploring and building bravery in your chosen area. So what you'll find is that doing these little mini baby steps individually and at the same time as other folks, these baby steps are so easy, and you end up wanting to take bigger steps than you think you might. I promise. And by the end of the week, you'll have a much better understanding of how you can be brave and apply this bravery in a really tangible way to the rest of your life too. So participation in the challenge is free, completely free. However, I want to be sure that you get in on the list before you miss the next challenge, which is coming up soon. So just go to barenakedbravery.com/challenge. Again, that's barenakedbravery.com/challenge, and you can sign up and you'll get prompted to do all the next steps. And I will see you guys in there. Okay, so you changed your life. You had this like reevaluation of what life means and how to go forward in it. And then what?
Yeah, so that was the quick and short version. I did some things like go to Bolivia and do a humanitarian workshop and like open my world vastly, and it was wonderful. So getting back to cancer, so that cancer experience like rocked my world in the terms of giving me really, really good clarity about who am I, what do I want, and how do I get there, while still being mom and a wife and having a home and not like, selling everything and touring the world by myself. Right. So it was kind of like that, but all in my head. In November, I knew that something was wrong with my mom and I didn't know what. And the circumstances were I was having my wisdom teeth removed like the week of Thanksgiving. And I did that strategically because I knew my family would be well fed by everyone else. And I called my mom and said, hey, would you come up here and help me out for a couple of days while I'm recovering? Because the kids weren't going to be in school and everything. And she said, oh, yeah, I would love to. We'll come up and we'll have Thanksgiving with family there. And so she and my stepdad came up and, I did the whole classic thing of getting my wisdom teeth removed and drooling for a solid day and a half. And so she was going to stay and see someone for something that she was concerned about with her breasts. And I was like, oh, what is that? And so when I figured out what she was concerned about in a breast changing, and she's very alternative medicine person, and she wanted to see someone for some lymphatic drainage. And I was like, why don't you see my naturopath first before you go home, just to have a breast exam? And of course, my naturopath wasn't in town. So she saw the next person who was available. And that's when I saw her naked from the, waist up for the first time and realized that something was really wrong. And she's the eternal optimist. So she's like, oh yeah, we'll figure this out and it'll be fine. And within a week, we found out that she had stage 4 breast cancer. Mm-hmm. And she never went home. And
wow.
She stayed here in the Seattle area. My brother lives just outside Seattle and has a spare bedroom. So my stepdad had to go home. They have business together, a home, and, invoices to send out and work to do. And so she stayed here, and I came to this, very clear moment of clarity again, where it was like, okay, she needs to get to these appointments and we need to get her as much information and care as we can. So I'm going to press pause on my business and all of my volunteer responsibilities until she's better. And so it was a really, really intense month and a half. It was 40 days from the day of diagnosis until she died.
That's big.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And also not big enough. 40 days is not enough.
No, it's not enough at all. So it was really, really intense. And that, again, sort of gives you a moment of pause. And I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And my sister, her and her husband are in Florida because he's in the military. And so I called her and I was like, you need to come here indefinitely. And so I don't think I said that precisely, but that turned out to be what that was. And so she was here for, I think, like probably 30 days of it. And, it went from, so cancer isn't like this nice clear cut thing. There's different types, even in breasts, there's variations. And she was waiting for, you have to do all these tests. And she was waiting for like a consultation with this specialist. And then she had to get this test done. And during that waiting period, and this was like the month of December between appointments waiting, she got to a point where she was in a lot of pain. And this is funny, but not funny, but she started to be in so much pain that like on Christmas Day, I was like, honey, you've got to find some pot right now. And my mom needs something. And I was, it's a funny, but not funny, and like so surreal that that was the scenario. Like there's so many scenarios throughout that experience that I found myself in where it's like, okay, what's the next thing that we can do? And what's the next decision that needs to be made? And but at the same time, I couldn't make all the decisions, right? This is my mom. This is her life. This is her body. So she was going to smoke pot until she had the next appointment and could get some medication and all of that. And then on New Year's Eve, she was in so much pain. I was out of town to visit my husband's family, and she was in so much pain. They took her into the ER and they did an emergency series of tests, and they found that the cancer had actually metastasized, and it was on her skull, several of her vertebrae, her hip, and throughout her chest cavity. And I think on her liver. It was just basically all over. And so we came back home. I went straight to the hospital New Year's Eve at like 10 p.m. in the hospital, and she was out of it and asleep. And my siblings and I were there And my brother told me, like, the full extent of it. And it's kind of like what I think you might experience if you're in an accident. You're just kind of stunned and trying to figure out, how did we get here and what do we do next? So we went through that, and she's in the hospital 12 days, and she passed enough tests to have 1 round of chemotherapy. And it was a, what can we do? Well, this is all you got. So give it, do you want to give it a try? And she wanted to give it a try. And that was really hard to watch.
Why was that hard to watch?
It was hard to watch because it was so painful, and it changed her appearance so drastically.
How did that memory affect your experience of her passing or moving on, or whatever your beliefs are?
Yeah. So I think it was, looking back on it, I think it was I think it was the perfect way for her to go if she was going to go so young. I'm totally getting emotional. I didn't think I would. She went out fighting.
Yeah.
She went out with this attitude that I'm not going to give up. And that was beautiful, but it was also really hard because, in my logical mind, I'm like, well, you should have had a mammogram a year ago, and you should have done X, Y, and Z, and then that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But how beautiful that she was in Seattle, and it was really hard that's how it played out. But her being in Seattle enabled her to die in the same hospital she was born in, and it enabled her children to be with her, and some of her siblings to come and say goodbye, and some of her nieces and nephews. And that was really lovely, but it was super hard.
I'm crying too.
Sorry.
No, this is like part of the, this is part of the bravery that we don't get a chance to look at very often. Like we see brave people doing these really heroic things that are super peak experiences, but the bravery occurs in the really low moments too. And it doesn't make it any less beautiful, or, gosh, I'm sniveling all over myself too. It doesn't make it any less beautiful. And sometimes it makes it more beautiful to have the pain and the terror right next to the beauty of a really brave moment. And I can only imagine how beautiful that experience was and how painful it was at the same time.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Brain fact.
Yeah.
Somebody reminded me the other day that the pleasure point in your brain is right next to the pain point in your brain.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is the reason why we have like some of the fetishes that we do in the world. I know
right. Yeah.
Total strange, total detour to our conversation, but
yeah,
I find it really fascinating that not only is that those points in our brain are right next to each other, and when our pain point is really activated, sometimes that pleasure point gets activated too, and vice versa. When the beautiful part happens in life, there's also a little bit of pain that exists in it as well. When she passed, I mean, what was that moment like with I'm assuming that your family was with you.
Yeah. It was just as chaotic and stressful as it was for her to be in the situation she was in. So my husband was at a conference in California the day that she was dying. And it's interesting because doctors don't just tell you doctors have a hard time saying you're probably going to die. You're not going to make it. And when I look back on it, I wish I would have just asked point blank. So what is this, like, how many days, right? No one ever gave us an estimate of those. The only person who gave us a heads up clearly was the on-staff hospital doctor. So you have like levels of doctors, based on your care. And you have a staff doctor who's just concerned about you staying alive in the hospital. And she told my brother and I around noon that day, she said, it's not easy to say, but my honest opinion is that your mom has less than 24 hours. I don't think she'll last 12 hours. And that was the first time a doctor had been really like, hey, this is actually happening right now to us. So I called my husband.
And what a gift.
It was, but it was really hard to hear. Like, it was hard to go,
of course.
Okay, you're telling us the truth now. Thank you. So it was a call to arms type of a moment. I called my husband and I was like, I need you home right now. Get here as soon as you can. And then a matter of texting and calling all the relatives that are able to come physically in person and say their goodbyes. And so when she died around 7 p.m. By 5 p.m., like the waiting room area was full of family. I want to say over 20 family members and my kids. And my husband showed up just after we had asked. I think I'd ushered my kids out of the room. They said, goodbye and we love you. And then I took them out and left them in the waiting room with my relatives, and my husband showed up and he was able to be there with them. So it was just, as she was like, you could see her taking her last breaths and her breathing was slowing down and her vitals were slowing down. And so it was just us siblings and my stepdad and my sister's husband was in the room and my brother's fiance. And so, we're talking like 6 or 7 people, and it was very beautiful, very peaceful, but also very surreal. It felt like it couldn't quite, like it took several minutes for the emotion of reality to hit me. It was watching her breathing, and it was holding her hand, and it was looking at machines to see what they said. So it was very peaceful, and it was very loving, and it was very hard.
Yeah, I love that. I so much love that the world gives us moments that have all of those descriptions at the same time. I think it's peaceful, loving, and hard. Like, you can't get much better than that. It really,
yeah,
it really is wonderful. And thank you for letting us have I can almost picture the room myself, the way that you describe it, and I think that's a gift for me. So thank you for letting me have a peek.
Yeah,
I do appreciate that. I think that's really, really beautiful. In the wrapping of all of this experience, what do you make of it? Where do you go from there? Like, after it happens and you leave the hospital room, then what?
It's very a lot of crying. It was a lot of, how do you deal with death? Like the business of death.
Yeah.
Planning a memorial or a funeral or even cremation process and a ceremony is almost like having to plan a wedding in a week.
And moving, getting a new job, getting married, those are like the 3 most stressful events in somebody's life. I think, isn't death right up there?
It should be.
Top 7?
It must be. Yeah. No, it was really hard. I would say that after going through all that, I was like, okay, honey, we're going to make plans for when we die so our kids don't have to deal with this off the fly. I had a description of what she wanted when she was coherent enough to tell me in the hospital what she wanted. But that experience was me taking rapid notes and my sister trying to tell her not to talk about it because it was too painful to even think that was going to happen. So I had to kind of wing it with some vague outline of what she wanted. And that's okay. And I am the sibling that directs and takes care of things. So I planned and coordinated a lot with anyone who wanted to help along the way. And that provided some really lovely closure. But it also, I think, walking out of that hospital room left me in a place of sort of going, Americans or the place I live, we don't really know how to deal with dying, and we don't really talk about it, and we don't really know how to plan for it. And so my direction was, how do I not end up like that for my kids?
Yeah. I don't think, we talked about this a little bit in Jake Hemming's episode. He's one of my singer-songwriter friends, and just his work, his work in his personal life, he deals a lot with death. Mm-hmm. We also talked with Kai Alfred Hillig, who's also a singer-songwriter, and he also deals with death a lot just in his vocation, or his other vocation, I should say. And I think all 3 of us, myself included, agree that Americans don't do death well at all.
No, it's very awkward.
It's very awkward. I was talking with my friend Mandy, who's a songwriter, and she lives on Orcas Island, in Washington.
Yeah.
And so near all the orca whales and everything, and she was telling me that their beloved granny whale, the grandmother whale who was like 108 years old,
yes,
passed away, or they assume that she passed away because she's not showing up with the pod anymore. And so I was like, what happened? Did like she float up onto the shore or something? She goes, no. Usually what happens with orca whales is the orcas will support the dying whale, and then they will all circle the whale until they just sink to the bottom, which
Wow.
makes me want to cry thinking about it, because you're physically holding up the whale so that they can breathe.
Yes.
Right. And then eventually you have to like let the whale sink to the bottom. And
that's
thinking
really
about
hard.
Oh yeah. And thinking about having your entire family swimming around you and holding you up, and then having it be a group decision to let you go. Ugh.
So beautiful though.
So beautiful. Animals are amazing.
Yes, they are.
Especially whales. I love those guys. Oh my gosh, thank you. This has been I know it's kind of a strange place to end, but I also feel like it's a really beautiful place to end too, because, well, not only is it like a pun on ending, but, but I think that it is a really good indication that sometimes the bravery is not, you don't know what to do next. And that then, it sounds like what you just did was you left the hospital room and then you did the next thing. Yes. And then you did the next thing, and then you did the next thing.
Yes. And
I think, if any of us are in brave moments, that's a really good place to look, is what's the next thing, not what's the whole big picture, but what's the very small next thing.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Ugh, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Emily.
Your main brave takeaway for today's episode is to do what I mentioned earlier in the episode, in the intro. For every review you leave in iTunes mentioning Holli's name, I will donate $10 to Planned Parenthood to ensure cancer screenings are accessible and affordable. $10 from my own personal bank account. I will make sure that happens. And thank you accordingly. Definitely. Your secondary brave takeaway is to get yourself screened. Make an appointment with a doctor and make sure you've got the preventative measures taken care of. I know it's not a really sexy homework assignment, but this is the stuff that makes the world go round, which is kind of funny, thinking that getting your boobs smashed in a machine is the stuff that makes the world go round, but it's kind of true. It really is. It's how bravery is. It's not sexy. Sometimes it's covered in sniffles and tears and tissues, and it isn't always glamorous. So I encourage you to get checked out and get your loved ones checked out and screened ahead of time. It's important. Holli Margell and I would love to hear all about your favorite parts of today's Bare Naked Bravery. She and I are waiting in the Facebook group community, the Bare Naked Bravery community. It is such a wonderful gem of a place on the internet, and you are welcome to join us for a big group bravery hug. Just go to facebook.com, of course, log into your Facebook account, and in the search bar type Bare Naked Bravery and we'll pop up, and you will be prompted with 2 questions which help us weed out the weirdos. Beyond that, if you don't want to join us on Facebook, then you can join us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the other places. And Holli's links to all of her photography and her beautiful, wonderful work are in the show notes for this episode. So go to barenakedbravery.com. We also mentioned 3 other episodes. We mentioned Jake Hemming's episode, Kai Alfred Hillig's episode, and Nathan Vass's episode on Bare Naked Bravery, and those links to those conversations are in the show notes for this episode as well. If you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it for you, then please review and rate the show in the iTunes desktop app or on your podcast app on your phone. And remember, if you mention Holli's name in that review, I will donate $10 to Planned Parenthood. It really does. Even if it's not on iTunes, sharing the episode really helps out a lot. The bravery that we experience in this show, this episode and all the others, it deserves to be spread as far and as wide as possible. And you are a part of that. So thank you for being ahead of time. Thank you. It means a lot. If you are digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by my friends at Music Box Licensing, a premier creative music agency dedicated to finding and crafting unique soundtracks. And you can go and visit all sorts of information about the artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show. Go to barenakedbravery.com/sponsors. I'm so looking forward to being with you later on the week. We have some awesome things coming down the pipeline for you. Until then, though, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself, be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.